Today I'm gonna tell you the story of Mr. Grumpy by Roger Hargraves. Show it to your kids so they learn this book. One nice summer afternoon, Mr. Grumpy picked up a book and sat on an armchair. And do you know what he did? He tore all the pages out. Mr. Grumpy is a bad-tempered fellow. He can't stand books. He's grumpy by name, and he's even more grumpy by nature. That summer morning, Mr. Grumpy was out in his garden pulling up flowers. Mr. Grumpy couldn't stand pretty flowers. Just after that, he saw a figure. It was Mr. Happy. "Morning," said Mr. Happy. "Good," said Mr. Grumpy. "What's so good about it?" said Mr. Happy. "Nothing. Get out of my garden," snapped Mr. Grumpy. When Mr. Grumpy went back to Crosspatch Cottage, he stepped on Mr. Happy's foot, which was extremely painful. Mr. Happy's foot hurt. He was thinking about something. He thought and thought and thought and thought. Mr. Happy had an idea. He went to Mr. Tickle. He whispered in Mr. Tickle's ear. Mr. Tickle rubbed his hands. That afternoon, Mr. Grumpy went to the shop to buy some sausages. Went in the shop. "Give me some sausages and be quick!" roared Mr. Grumpy to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper was frightened of Mr. Grumpy, but did as he was told. Then Mr. Tickle's extraordinary long arm came in the shop. Mr. Grumpy didn't see it. And do you know what the extraordinary arm did? Tickled him. And Mr. Grumpy's shopping fell on the ground. He picked up his sausages and he was walking to the cake shop. Mr. Grumpy went to the shopkeeper. He said, "Give me a cake as fast as you can." The shopkeeper was very frightened of Mr. Grumpy, but the shopkeeper did as she was told. And Mr. Tickle's extraordinary long arm came above his head. And Mr. Tickle tickled Mr. Grumpy. It happened everywhere. Mr. kept on dropping his shopping and picking it up and dropping it down and picking it up. It happened all afternoon. Getting tickled, dropping his shopping, picking it up. He was going back to Crosspatch Cottage. He met Mr. Happy again. "Hello," said Mr. Happy. "Out of my way," snapped Mr. Grumpy. "Otherwise I'll kick you." Just behind Mr. Grumpy was Mr. Tickle's extraordinary long arm. The ordinary long arm tickled him. "I think you have to change your temper," said Mr. Happy. "Maybe then these tickling days will start getting less and less." Said Mr. Grumpy. Mr. Happy and Mr. Tickle laughed and they shook hands together. Mr. Grumpy is getting less and less tickled. Night, Mr. Grumpy chose a book. And do you know what he did? Only pulled out one page. This is a lesson from the story that we must never ever be grumpy. Maybe these things will happen to us if we're grumpy. This is the end. Tomorrow I'll come up with new story. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.